Hello, and welcome to this episode of the 5G Factor, which is our newest webcast here at Futurum Research, and it's focused on all things 5G. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, and I am joined today by my colleague and fellow analyst and co host, Ron Westfall. And we're going to take a look today at some key trends in the 5G market. Hello, Ron. How are you?
Well, good day, Shelly. Taking a break from the summer heat. So this is definitely something that I'm looking forward to talk more about is all the sizzling developments in the 5G world today.
Absolutely. And I have to admit, like you, Ron's in Houston, I'm in Kansas City. We are accustomed to hot, hot weather into August, sometimes into September. But I'm getting to the point personally where I'm ready for just a little, 85. I would be happy with that. But
Nice
in
and
the
cool.
in the big scheme of things, being hot is, kind of first world problems, especially with all that are going on right now. So I'm not going to complain. So, we're going to start off our show today and we're going to talk about recent developments in the open RAN market. And really, what we're going to start talking about, and I know it's something that Ron's really dialed in on, is the whole rise of rip and replace in the United States. And we've got some new rip and replace deals that were announced this last month. And so, we kind of want to look at those and get some key takeaways on, what's going on there with rip and replace, Ron. So, dive in and tell us a little bit more about that.
Right on. Yes. Rip and replace is rising. And there's 1.9 billion reasons for this. First of all, when Congress passed the COVID 19 relief funding to the tune of about $1 trillion, it also included what is now called the Secure and Trusted Communications Networks Act. And that's allocated funding for what is called the RIP and Replace program, now being administered by the FCC. And the FCC is allocating funds to mostly independent and regional carriers throughout the US to replace equipment from Huawei and ZTE. And a little background, there are actually over 1,300 independent telcos in the US. So the US market's rather distinct, and many of
Mm.
them are definitely very good at servicing their localities. They actually are high touch. They are very prioritizing, having the best equipment that they can use to serve their customers. And so this is actually a very important opportunity for the ecosystem, and
Right.
specifically suppliers like Nokia, Ericsson, Mavenir, and Adtran. All of them have been involved in the development of the rip and replace program, how the legislation was worded. And the other reasons why rip and replace is taking off is that, in addition to the government funding it, there's also a provision that it has to be comprehensively done, meaning you have to rip and replace all the Huawei equipment, all the ZTE equipment. You can't, just pick some of the equipment and be selective about it. And there's also currently right now a 1 year provision. And so that is a tight timetable for many of these smaller carriers, even with their capabilities. And as a result, we're seeing an acceleration in terms of, okay, how can we get on this bandwagon? Can we meet this tight 1 year timetable? And I
Right.
think it's important to note that when this was developed, Nokia advocated extending that 1 year timetable, and I believe that that will end up happening. But for now, the FCC is sticking to the 1 year timetable. Let's see how this develops, and then we can see if we need to do 6 month or 12-month extensions. Because it's one thing to replace, for example, the core, the mobile core, that could take 6 to 8 months. That's relatively more straightforward. However, replacing the RAN components and replacing the back office components, such as the OSS and BSS processes, that can take more time and could exceed the 12-month limit. So this is something that's definitely percolating. For example, Ericsson indicated that in working with the 100 plus independent telcos that they're engaged with, that about 40% of it is a rip and replace effort, and they anticipate that number to increase naturally as there's more momentum, as more carriers board onto this program. So it's definitely something that we are definitely going to be watching. And to your point, Shelly, about some of the recent deals, one was Mavenir One Triangle Communications in Montana, their rip and replace effort. And that actually is interesting because not only are they supplying both the hardware and the software components, because Mavenir is a relatively new entrant to the hardware side of supplying RAN equipment, specifically OpenRAN. So this is a feather in the cap, but it's also specific to the fixed wireless access deployments of Triangle. And so this is indicating that OpenRAN in the early stages of rip and replace will have a role. Now, on
Yeah.
the other hand, we anticipate that most of the rip and replace will rely mostly on traditional RAN technologies, at least in the early stages, the good majority of it. For example, Nokia's deal with Union Wireless, based in Wyoming, that was both equipment and services. So we can anticipate that some carriers will be interested in working with a major supplier that can also provide the services to ease, this transition.
Right.
And so, yeah, we'll definitely be looking forward to seeing more rip and replace headlines over the course of the rest of this year and well into 2022. And so this is definitely something that is putting Open RAN, but also mobile transition technology into the headlines.
Absolutely. Well, very interesting stuff and much more ahead, right?
No doubt. Yeah, I think what's also important to note is that rip and replace is U.S. Specific, but there's also concern about how much impact can Open RAN have if the suppliers aren't fully aligned with supporting 3G and 2G, because almost all the headlines related to Open RAN are related to supporting 4G and 5G networks. Open RAN is actually very much aligned with 5G specifications. That is, relying on virtualization, separating the control plane and the user plane, using disaggregated networking techniques. And so it's very well suited for that. However, backward compatibility is important.
Right.
And as a result, last year, for example, Mavenir bought a company called IP Access just to address this backward compatibility.
Right.
Another Open RAN supplier, Parallel Wireless, made a good deal of headway and differentiation by touting that capability. And just this month, Mavenir took that extra step of ensuring 2G backward compatibility for Open RAN, because for one thing, there's still 2G connections in North America and the US to this
Right.
day, as well as Europe. But more importantly, in other parts, including India and Africa and Asia, there are at least a billion plus 2G connections out there.
Right.
And so for Open RAN to really have much impact on a global basis, you really need to have that built-in backward compatibility.
Yeah.
And so this is actually a very encouraging development to see, the suppliers upping their game and making sure that Open RAN can fulfill all of the G's in terms of, being able to work with the existing networks out there.
Ron, I can always count on you for the clever nuggets, fulfill all of the G's.
It's a G thing, yes.
And with that, we'll move on to some other G's. One of the things that caught my attention and that I wrote about this week was about the GM partnership with AT&T on 5G cellular connectivity. And I thought this was really fascinating. And I actually am a car person. It's funny. I don't know like that I've always been that way, but I'm kind of a car person now, and I'm really fascinated by the advancements in the automotive industry and what we're seeing happening in some key partnerships. But speaking of this partnership, the GE and AT&T partnership. Um, the companies announced that they'll bring 5G cellular connectivity to select Cadillac, Chevrolet, and GMC vehicles by 2024. And so that connection boost will impact, faster navigation, better coverage, more reliable software updates, more rapid software updates for like in-vehicle infotainment systems, and also an interesting point is that GM models from 2019 and newer that are equipped with 4G LTE will also be able to migrate to the new network infrastructure. So I think this is really important for a couple reasons. One is I think that we're seeing the democratization of connected cars. And we talked about this earlier before this show started. And I drive a fancy luxury car. And, and this is the probably, this is actually the second luxury car that I've had that's been pretty connected. But this one is even more connected. And I drive a 2020 Mercedes. And as I was telling Ron in our earlier conversation, I don't think I could run into anything if I tried because the car is equipped with so many safety features that it literally shuts down if, it senses me getting too close to somebody or if it senses me backing up and there's something in the way. And it's just really, really interesting. And then, of course, once you get used to those kinds of safety features, or if you drive a vehicle like a Tesla and you're used to getting software upgrades, through the internet, right? All of a sudden it seems so backwards to be driving a car that doesn't afford sort of that safety and those luxuries and those kind of easy updates. And so, I wrote last year about a partnership between Hyundai and NVIDIA that will enable Hyundai to bring connected vehicle features, the top of the line connected vehicle features to its entire fleet in about this same time period. So I think what we're seeing is car makers embracing the IoT, embracing 5G, embracing all things that, that contribute to the connected car ecosystem. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that, what this announcement signals, of course, is AT&T's belief in their 5G network and that it'll be ready to handle millions of connected cars by the end of 2023 when those 2024 models are released. And so I think we're going to see some impressive growth there. Ron, are you paying attention at all to the whole connected car and 5G driving this innovation there?
Oh, you bet. Like you, Shelly, I'm a car lover, and so it's. I think one reason why the major carriers are promoting their collaboration efforts on the automotive side is because almost everybody is interested in it. It's a great
Yeah,
way to promote your wares, and
absolutely.
I think it's important that it really is when it comes to 4G, 5G connectivity, mostly about enabling the infotainment capabilities. For example, I have an older model Honda Odyssey, and the infotainment is really a DVD player. And, that's a
Right.
hassle to have to switch those out, and you have, little kids in the back and, they're clamoring for, I want to watch Despicable Me instead, so
Right.
it's almost you have to pull over if you really want to be safe
Right.
about, updating that. And what I think is definitely exciting about the 5G connectivity capabilities is just having that flexibility to do video streaming to the infotainment system, having just more flexibility on the computer screen and so forth. And I think that will be welcomed by everybody. It'll make cars safer. It'll just give people more options to entertain the backseat drivers, especially on long distance driving. So this is just I think a good example of the ecosystem coming together and improving these capabilities. Also, I think it's important that when you look at suppliers on the silicon side, like Marvell, I think they're definitely advancing what could be called, Ethernet working for the automotive sector. So instead of like legacy proprietary interworking, which can make the cars more expensive, they also quite simply can be complex to assure interworking by using Ethernet networking principles that are already universally applied in offices and so forth to automobiles. I think we can see even more advances in terms of these capabilities. So it's a great example of different technology trends coming together to fulfill that vision of the automobile becoming much safer, becoming just smarter, more agile, and so forth. So it's a thumbs up.
Well, and I think that, our conversation here over the course of the last couple minutes has focused on consumer vehicles, but there are huge applications that this new level of connectivity brings to, fleets and fleet management services and, when I was writing this article about the GM and AT&T partnership, one of the things that GM's VP of Global Connectivity, Santiago Chamorro, mentioned that their OnStar vehicle service connects about 60 million vehicles across, U.S. roadways, and so enabling that 5G access, the 5G network for strategic partners will play a big role in, growing other mobility services and things that we see in smart cities of the future. And, that future is this far away. It's not really a long time away. So I think that was really exciting. And I'm also, we look a lot here. Our team in general is, we look across the industries as a whole and trends. And, I mentioned Hyundai's partnership with NVIDIA. And, what NVIDIA does is really powers that connected car operating system across the entire Hyundai fleet using NVIDIA's Drive platform. Um, and this is really a focus on extending a software defined connected car experience and bringing the very best in driving, which I think is really cool. And some recent news that our colleague Daniel Newman wrote about too was, watching what Qualcomm's doing in the automotive industry, and we expect to, they're doing some pretty significant things, and we expect that to be even more significant in the coming months. Qualcomm's recently pursued Veoneer, which is a developer of full stack automotive technologies, including safety systems like radar and vision systems and driver monitoring systems and all different kinds of technologies, also autonomous driving features and restraint controls. And so, we don't know yet what's going to happen with Qualcomm's bid to acquire Veoneer, but we are certainly watching that with anticipation because what it does show us is that Qualcomm's ambitions and strategy and strategic focus in the automotive industry is significant and certain to get even more significant over time. So I thought that was, pretty interesting in terms of, what's going on for car people.
Yes, and I think it's important to note that a lot of the vision, certainly advanced by Elon Musk, with the whole Tesla,
Right.
offering, is that automobiles are increasingly becoming computers on wheels, and so I think this is aligning with fulfilling that vision. And overall, it's good news because,
Yeah.
again, it's just making these built-in capabilities safer. And a lot of it really is coming down to onboard computing. Yes, there will be a role for 4G, 5G connectivity for infotainment. But there's still, I think, a little confusion that, oh, if you have an autonomous car and it's relying on sensors embedded throughout, an urban grid, and if one of those
Yeah.
sensors doesn't communicate, the car will suddenly shut down and cause, an independent set of accidents. Well, that's not what is being pursued here. That,
Right.
at least in the foreseeable future, that would be much further out, and it would be for selective capabilities like fleet management,
Right.
not individual cars. And so we can't get too far ahead of ourselves. We really have to focus on, when it comes to the 4G, 5G connectivity
Right.
capabilities, it really is a specific set of technical features, and it's not a comprehensive, car capability that is going to be offered anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good stuff. Good stuff. Now, moving on, I wanted to, since I was already on the topic of AT&T, I wanted to touch base on AT&T's partnership with the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. And I know that you are really focused on and excited about mmWave technology, and this is what that's all about. So, this partnership at UT at Knoxville is. AT&T is installing a 5G test bed using mmWave spectrum, and and I think that is, what we've seen is lots of mmWave expansion over the course of this year alone. We've seen, Ericsson, Motorola, Nokia, Rakuten, Samsung, and others, talk about sort of their efforts to support and expand this technology around the world, and that's really exciting. What I loved about this story, what I loved about this story is just kind of showing, what what is possible. A lot of these universities, um, we've got the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. AT&T has also partnered with the University of Missouri and a couple other ones. I have it in front of me, and I just wrote about it today, and I kind of forgot. I kind of forgot who else they were partnering with. Oh, they've partnered with Texas A&M, the University of Connecticut, and the University of Missouri. And these partnerships were all about bringing private 5G networks to the universities. What this University of Tennessee partnership is really about this 5G testbed using mmWave spectrum. And what I think is particularly cool about this is a couple of things. One is some of these universities are located in more rural areas. And so this kind of coverage, bringing this kind of coverage to their research facilities opens the door to opportunities that could impact the community, the country, and even the world, because what you have is students being able to take advantage of and work on these advanced technologies and experimenting with things like machine learning and biometric data and augmented reality and virtual reality, and to experiment and learn. This is our next gen workforce, right? And so they have the ability to experiment with and learn on this technology that would maybe otherwise be cost prohibitive due to where they're located. So I thought that that was a really cool expansion of AT&T's partnerships with the universities on those couple of fronts. I'm sure that you have thoughts on mmWave expansion coming to a city near you.
Right on. Yes. Now, millimeter wave technology is definitely something that is integral to 5G's future. Verizon also is investing heavily in the technology, and like our conversation, Shelly, about 5G connectivity on cars, there's still some misperceptions about millimeter wave technology.
Right.
It is high frequency. It is typically implemented in the 24 gigahertz to 100 gigahertz range. And so people think, oh, well, that gives you higher bandwidth, but distance is a trade off. And that is intrinsic. But what is not true is that it will just keep, bouncing off walls. It'll be difficult to control and manage. There have definitely been advances in, for example, beamforming technology to make millimeter wave technology more compatible to mainstream deployments. And for example, I think AT&T leveraging the academic communities in places like Texas
Yeah.
A&M down the road from me in College Station, and University of Tennessee at Knoxville, which is a lovely, charming campus, reminds us that academia can play a key role in showing how we can even improve it more. And in addition, Verizon is betting on millimeter wave to enable, for example, their smart stadium offerings. That's when you step into the stadium, you want that enhanced immersive experience. That's the technology that's being used there, but also play a role in what they're calling their smart home offering, so that they have a unified network architecture to meet both the fixed and the mobile needs of their customers. So they're not having to run a more expensive network. And the way that works is that you can offer, obviously, 5G mobility, but also 5G fixed wireless access off, fundamentally the same architecture, using more backhaul capabilities for any smart home connectivity, et cetera. So this is all, again, illustrating why millimeter wave is going to be essential for many of the plans of the major telcos, and that some of the naysayers are going to have to dial back, their initial skepticism, which had some more, but now it's just receding more.
Absolutely. Well, good stuff. Good stuff.
You bet.
So, speaking of major telcos, I want to talk a little bit about Mavenir's acquisition of Telestax, which I know is all about, 5G monetization opportunities, communication platforms as a service, which we're seeing more and more of those. Talk with us a little bit about this. I know you just covered it.
Right on. Well, Mavenir's had a busy August here. We've
Absolutely.
mentioned them at least three times in our conversation here,
Right.
and that's good. Yes, the Telestacks acquisition I think is a sound one. Both companies are headquartered in Texas for one, and
Yeah.
Telestacks definitely has pedigree and acumen in the communications platform as a service market
Right.
segment. And what I think is important here is that yes, yeah, Mavenir now can enhance its existing Mavenir Engage platform to improve things like messaging programmability, campaigns, and on and on. All these
Right.
capabilities that come with existing CPaaS implementations. And what I think is important here is that obviously Mavenir has 5G and mobile expertise that many of the established communication platform as a service providers don't have inside their portfolio today. And this includes companies like Twilio,
Right.
Vonage. Some of these are, somewhat household names, but also other companies like Bird Message that definitely have made inroads in this market. But what's also important to note here is that you have, players like Microsoft, like AWS, also Cisco, also targeting the space. So
Right.
Mavenir has its work cut out to further differentiate a CPaaS offering here. However, what I think is going to help them is the fact that unlike almost all these other players, they have that in-house 5G portfolio capabilities
Right.
or overall mobile capabilities. And I think that will be a kickstart to their ability to leverage the Telestax capabilities to make quick inroads in this heavily crowded market. And so this is going to be good, for enterprise customers and certainly service providers that are targeting enterprises, with their own CPaaS type of implementations, and which is also increasingly overlapping with unified communications as a service and so forth. It's all about making enterprises smarter when it comes to platforms like we're using right now. Just making communications more flexible, especially with the work from home
Right.
becoming more mainstream for many major enterprises,
Right.
as well as other key trends. So this
Well,
is, I think,
like
something
the
that's
the
good.
whole the whole BYOD,
Yes.
devices, bring your own devices, the work from home. That's not, I mean, even as people start going back into the office when slash if that happens, as things are a little dicey right now. But I believe there's always going to be some kind of a hybrid situation, and so being able to serve that whole, the enterprise work from home employees and the support, the BYOD policies and things like that. I think that's really a big deal here.
No doubt. And I think it's also about security. They
Yep.
also emphasize, voice biometrics,
Yep.
certainly interactive voice response capabilities. And this is, again, aligning with, enterprises accelerating adoption of 5G and also making service providers more adept at differentiating and monetizing their 5G offerings. So, yeah,
Right.
this is something that I think the whole ecosystem will pay attention to, and will force some of these established market leaders in that segment to become more advanced in
Right.
how they integrate mobile 5G capabilities with their offerings.
Absolutely. Super important. Well, we're going to wrap up this show talking about one last interesting partnership, and this is between Boingo Wireless and AWS. And, so if you are a frequent traveler, or if you go to stadium venues, you are probably familiar with Boingo Wireless. And there was already a partnership between Boingo Wireless and AWS, but they have just announced an expansion of that partnership. And Boingo Wireless is integrating AWS Edge and cloud services with their own converged network offering. And, this is going to be implemented with things like distributed antenna systems and Wi-Fi and other private network deployments. And where we're going to see this is in stadiums and airports and manufacturing facilities and healthcare facilities, and really other large enterprises are all kind of key candidates for this kind of an expanded partnership. And I think it's pretty cool, and I think it's important. Um, I was in Chicago O'Hare in the last week after a quick trip to visit one of my daughters. And so this caught my attention in terms of an example of this in use. So Boingo recently launched a new private network at O'Hare Airport using Citizens Broadband radio service, Spectrum, and connecting IoT devices that power essential airport services. And what they're trying to do with this is that they want to transition to more touchless experiences for passengers. Who's not in favor of that, right? The more touchless, the better for me. And, O'Hare also recently launched a virtual customer service center at its Travelers Aid Station, and it needed its own wireless network to facilitate live video chats with on site passengers and remote staff. So, when you think about the use cases here, I think that's what's really important. And where AWS comes in is, of course, their cloud and edge capabilities that are, powering that. So, what users get is fast speed, high quality video, better customer service all the way around. Again, whether you're in a stadium watching a sporting event or at a concert, or whether you're in an airport or other facility. I think this is really interesting. I like seeing the expansion of this partnership, and I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's another great example of how this is really an ecosystem play. It shows that when it comes to 5G and Wi-Fi, in many cases, it's not an either or proposition. They can definitely coexist and complement each other. And I
Right.
think the airport example is a wonderful one because I know myself and many folks we know, when you walk into an airport, you're probably using 4G or 5G on your phone,
Right.
and when you have to sit down and do something on a laptop while waiting for the flight to take off, you will gladly switch over to the Wi-Fi service that's offered. And in many cases, it's Boingo. It could
Yeah.
some show the Boingo trademark, but other times it could be labeled by the local airport authority. And so on. So it's just again another, I think, great example of how players can collaborate to make things better for customers, for
Yeah.
users there. And so this is, I think, a good example of how Wi-Fi is definitely something that can be integral to making better experiences for folks out there.
And that's what it's all about. That's what 5G is all about, right? Better experiences, more innovation, all kinds of exciting things. Well, Ron, I think that about wraps our show today, the 5G factor. To our audience, thank you for hanging out with us. And if you are watching us on LinkedIn and you're not yet connected with Ron or with me, be sure and do that. And if you are watching this on YouTube, be sure and hit the subscribe button. And if you're listening on our Futurum podcast channel, be sure and hit that subscribe button. So we love having you around, and we love having conversations like this. And we look forward to seeing you next time.